Do you want to learn Python, but you keep making excuses for yourself? You think it's difficult and you have to install advanced software on your computer? Not with my video. In this video you will watch over my shoulder and I teach you the basics of Python. There is no need to install any software on your PC as you will use an online Python editor. But if you've already installed a Python environment on your computer, you will also be able to follow along with this tutorial. At the end of this video, you know the basics of Python and you will be a starting Python developer. And you will be familiar with all the concepts you see here at the right side of your screen. Let's not wait any longer, let's start right away. Now make sure to watch this video till the end, because at the end of this video we're going to build the game Rock Paper Scissors in Python. And I'm going to show you as well how to get my Python cheat sheet for free. And the website that we're going to use to build the first Python script is replit.com. So navigate to this website, you can find the link to this website in the description of this video. And then click on Start Building. Or you can choose to log in with your Google account. Or you can continue by email, fill in your email address, your password and click on Create an Account in order to create an account. Now once you've activated your account by clicking on the link in the registration email, you're gonna land on this page. And here you're gonna click on Create REPL in order to create a new script. The template that we're gonna use is Python, but if you want to experiment with other programming languages, you can do that as well on Replit. So select Python, and then let's call the script Python tutorial. And then click on Create REPL in order to create your first script. Now let's take a look at the screen in front of us. So on the left side you see all the files that are currently part of our project. And by default we always call our first file main.py. If you want to create more files, you can click here on this icon in order to create a new file, and you even can create directories by clicking on this icon. Now this is where we're going to type a Python code. Now let's try to put something on the screen. So let's type print, use parentheses, double quotation marks, and then type hello world with an exclamation mark. Like this. Now once we run our script, on the right side of our screen you will see the output of the script. Now don't worry, we're not going to print anything. Print is just a command that we use to put something on the screen. Let's click on run. And you will see that the outcome of print hello world is hello world. Now we can also ask artificial intelligence to help us, so let's remove this entire script. And then you will see here generate code with AI. Press Ctrl I. So once you click Ctrl I, you can ask an AI assistant to type some code for you. Let's try that out. Put hello world on the screen. Then you're going to press enter. And you see here the code that the AI assistant generated for you. You can accept it or reject it by clicking on one of the two buttons. And now you can run it just like any other piece of code. I will see the outcome here on the screen. While you are setting your first steps in the world of Python, you might have already seen that Replit also has a function called autocomplete, and that it sometimes will autocomplete code for you. And some people find this very helpful, but other people find it very annoying. So if you don't want to use autocomplete, just navigate to the bottom of your screen, click here on AI, and then you can disable here AI autocomplete and AI code repair. And I also know that some of you might prefer the dark mode over the light mode. So what you can do in order to change the theme of Replit is click here on your user profile, then navigate to account, then scroll all the way down, and then here you can select a different theme. So you can go for the dark theme, or you even might want to go for the spooky theme. So on the right side we still see the output of our script. If you click here on the three dots, then click on console, clear history, you can clear the history of your console, and you can start with a blank console. Now let's try something different. I'm going to put the name of my dog here. So I'm going to say Jack. And of course, if I now run the script, we will get Jack on the screen. But I want to try something different. So I'm going to say my underscore dog. You cannot use spaces in variable names. So let's just say my underscore dog is equal to Jack. And then I'm going to print my dog. But now I'm not going to use double quotation marks because I'm referring to this variable. So what I'm doing here is I'm declaring a variable. So the variable name is my dog and the content of this variable is Jack. And now I'm printing my dog. If I don't print my dog and run the script, you won't see anything. And that's because I'm declaring my dog, but I'm not putting my dog on the screen. So if I print now my dog, now you will see Jack. And why am I now referring to my dog without double quotation marks? If I put quotation marks around it, you will just see my dog and you won't see Jack. So it's important that when you use variables, you don't use quotation marks. You only want to use quotation marks when you put literal text on the screen. Now let's try the following. Let's combine some text with a variable. So let's put double quotation marks here. And at the end of some text, I'm going to put a plus to show Python that I now want to use a variable. And then I'm going to say the name of my dog is colon space. And then I use double quotation marks, a plus sign, and then the name of the variable. Let's see what we get. The name of my dog is Jack. Now let's also take a look at some other types of variables. So my underscore age, let's say that I'm 25 years old. And this is what we call an integer. I can also store my age between double quotation marks. Now it's a string, but now you can only use 25 as a text. Make sure that you don't use double quotation marks because otherwise you cannot do any calculations with them. Now there is another type of variable and that's what we call a float. So let's say that we have a book. So let's say that we have a book, price of my book. And let's say that it costs like €18.95. And because this number contains a decimal separator, a dot, it's called a float instead of an integer. And again, you see that we don't use the quotation marks. Now let's say that we discount our book. So I'm gonna copy this one, put it here. And let's say the price of my book now changes to €12.50. And let's put now the price of my book on the screen. Print price of my book. Let's run the script. The name of my dog is still Jack. And now you see that the price of my book is €12.50. And that's because we have overwritten the price of $18.95 right here. Now, if you're living in Europe or anywhere else where we don't use a dot but a comma as a decimal separator, like this, make sure that you always use a dot because Python cannot handle commas for numbers. Now, you've already learned the three most important variables, but there is one more, and that's what we call a Boolean. So let's create another variable. Book is reserved. And a Boolean variable can only be true, like this, or false. So it only has two states, and make sure that you use a capital as the first letter, because Python is case sensitive. And a variable that only has two states doesn't look very useful for now, but later in this course you will see why this Boolean variable is so useful. Okay, now let's try something new. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to create a new variable, my dog. And then what I'm going to use here is a function called input. Use parentheses and double quotation mark. Provide the name of your dog. Like this. And if I run the script now, and Python will ask me for the name of my dog. And I can type it here. So I can type here Jack. Now this doesn't look that good. So by pressing enter, I provide this input to Python, and Python can further process it. And you will see now that the script has ended, because I also have to do something with this information. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a backslash here and the letter N, like this. And if I run the script now, provide the name of your dog, it will start on a new line. So the N stands for new line. So I can provide here Jack, like this. Okay. Let's also now put the variable my dog on the screen. So print my dog, like this. Run it. Provide the name of your dog. Let's do something else. Let's do Alfred. And you see Alfred also appearing on the screen. So the first appearance, this is what I type, and this is what Python put on the screen. And of course, this doesn't make too much sense because I provide the same value on the screen, but it can also do something with it. So let's do the following. So let's add my text, a new variable, is equal to the name of my dog is, like this. And then I'm going to make an entire text. So my entire text is equal to my text plus my dog. So of course we can use the plus symbol in calculations, but the way I use it here is called string concatenation. And it sounds quite difficult, but it doesn't mean anything more than just adding two strings to each other. So let's run the script. Provide the name of your dog, Jack. Oh, and of course we also have to put it on the screen. So let's print my entire text like this. Run it. Provide the name of your dog, Jack. The name of my dog is Jack. You see, there is no space here. And with concatenation, you also have to make sure that you add a space. And if you want to do that, I'm going to add another string here, which is just a space. And if you run it now, provide the name of your dog, Jack. The name of my dog is Jack. Now let's try something else. Let's remove this. Amount of children. How many kids do you have? And then I'm going to put this number on the screen like this. How many kids do you have? So I'm going to say I have 3. And you will see that Python again adds the number 3. So this is again the number that I provide, and this is where Python repeats it. Again, let's make it a bit more complex. So I'm going to say amount of parents. So let's say our family has 2 parents. Then I'm asking the amount of children, and then I'm adding them to get the entire size of my family. So our family is equal to amount of children plus the amount of parents. How many kids do you have? Let's say 3 again. And now we get an error. Type error can only concatenate str, which stands for a string, not integer. And here we have to go back to everything we learned about variables, because by default, everything that you get from the user is always a string. Now this is clearly an integer, it's 2, and then it's basically trying to concatenate those two, but it cannot concatenate a string and an integer. And this is wrong from Python anyway, because I do not want to concatenate 2 and 3. I want to add them, like mathematically add them. So what I'm going to do here is amount of children input. I have to convert this to an integer, and converting a string to an integer is quite easy. You just surround it by int, like this. And now amount of children is an integer, amount of parents is also an integer, so our family is also going to be an integer. And now I also have to put this on the screen. The size of our family is plus our family, like this. Let's run it. How many kids do you have? 3. And now we get again an error. Can only concatenate string, not integer. It's the same error, but this time it's about our family. Because remember, our family is an integer, is a result of a calculation, and this is a string, clearly. So what I have to do here is I have to convert our family, the integer, to a string, which is also quite easy. I just surround it by str, like this. And be aware that I open parentheses here. I also open them here. So here you have to close them 2 times. Let's run a script. How many kids do you have? 3. The size of our family is 5. And this makes sense. So keep in mind that a text can only be a string. It cannot be an integer, because otherwise you get an error immediately. But a number, for example 2, can be both an integer and a string. But of course, if it's a string, like in this case, how many kids do you have? You cannot do any calculations with it. So you have to convert it to an integer or to a float. And something that I also want to show you. So let's remove the integer function here. So we have amount of children, like this. I'm going to add a variable here. Amount of children as int is equal to int amount of children. So the most things in Python you can do in many different ways. So what I did before, I did the conversion to an integer in the same line. Now I'm creating a new variable. So this variable is going to be a string, and this variable is going to be an integer. And then of course I also have to change it here. So this is amount of children as integer. I'll also, you will see that the script runs the same. There is no difference. So I have 3 kids. Size of our family is 5. But I want to show you something else, which is the type function. And the type function provides you the type of the variable. So let's try amount of children, like this. Let's run it. How many kids do you have? 3. How many kids do you have? 3. The size of the family is 5. And now it says class string. And this means that amount of children is a string. And if I now add here as integer, let's run it again. Now you will see class int. So this means that this variable is now an integer. And if you also want to support numbers with decimals, you don't use the int function for an integer, but you use the float function. Now with kids, this doesn't entirely make sense. So how many kids do you have? Let's say 2.5. And now you see the size of a family is 4.5 and the class is a float. So you've now learned how to convert a string to an integer or to a float. And you've also learned how to convert an integer to a string in order to put it on the screen. In this chapter, we're going to look at logic, and you will learn how to build logic in your Python applications. You probably know the famous car maker Henry Ford. And Henry has a very famous quote where he says, you can order any color as long as it's black. So in this chapter, we're going to help Henry to automate his sales process so he can sell more cars. Let's start by asking the customer which color he wants his car to be. So I'm going to create a new variable here, car color is equal to input. Which color do you want your car to be? Like this. And now we can start with creating statements. So let's start with if car color is equal to black, colon. Now in the code that I just typed, there are two things that are very important. You see here that I'm using two equality signs, and that's because I'm performing a comparison. So I'm comparing whether car color is equal to black. And that's different than a definition, because here I'm defining that car color is equal to whatever the user adds here. So every time we perform a check on a value, we check whether the car color is equal to black, we use two equality signs. Every time we define that car color is equal to black, we just use one equality sign. Then the second thing that's really important is, so whatever code we want to run, if car color is equal to black, we put here, and you can either use a tab symbol here, or you can use two spaces to show that this is part of this statement. And we can also add a statement that will be performed for any other colors. So let's add an else statement. Sorry, we don't sell this color. Now let's try to run this piece of code. And let's start by ordering a red car. Sorry, we don't sell this color here. Let's run the code again. And let's now go for a black car. Congratulations with ordering a black car. So this piece of code works. Now let's imagine that Henry wants to add another color to his catalog. Now we can use the elif statement. Car color is equal to white. Congratulations with ordering a white car. Now let's see how this works, and I'm just going to clear my console. That's right. And as you can see, we've just ordered a white car. Now we can also add another variable. Let's also add a model. And we can also add and or operators here. So let's just check for people who ordered a black car, and where the model is equal to, and make sure that you use two equality signs here, t. Let's clear the console, and let's run this piece of code. Which color do you want? Black. And the model, I want it to be t. Congratulations with ordering a black car. So you see that you can also use and you can also use or logic here. But in this tutorial, I'm not going to dive too much in this. What you can also do, you can also add statements in this if statements. So if you want to add another if statement here to check for anything else, that's also possible. Let's clear this piece of code and let's take a look at how we can process numeric variables. So for this assignment, we're just going to imagine an imaginary country. And in this country, you have different tax rates. So for a salary below 50,000 euro, you pay 40% tax. And for a salary of 50,000 euro or more, you pay 50% tax. So let's create a tax calculator for people who live in this country. I'm going to start again with defining the variable income. What is your income? And make sure that you also convert this to an integer so that we can perform calculations and also equations with it. If income is less than 50,000, print your tax percentage is 40%. And now we can do two things which basically have the same result. So we can define elif. Income is more than or equal to 50,000. The tax percentage is 50%. You already see here that if you're not making less than 50,000, you make 50,000 or more. So we can also change this elif to an else statement. And this makes our code a bit easier to read. And just as with Henry Ford's example, we can also add and or statements here. Now in our next chapter, we're going to take a look at loops, and we're going to start with the while statement. So I'm going to create a new variable here called counter, which is equal to 0. So this is an integer. And then I'm going to add this while statement. So while counter is less than 10, do the following, print counter. So you see now that I have a counter, the counter is 0, and the condition is while counter is less than 10, print counter. And please don't execute the code that you see now on my screen because it's still missing something. So what the while statement basically does, it keeps executing the code inside the while statement until this condition is not met anymore. And because the value of counter is 0 and counter is not increased, this basically means that this script keeps running infinitely on your screen. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to add a piece of code, counter is counter plus 1. And this means that this piece of code will run 10 times from 0 to 9. And the statement that you see here, you can also write it a bit shorter. So you can write it like this, plus equal to 1. And this means the same as counter is counter plus 1. And you see indeed that we start with 0 because in the beginning counter is 0 and we end with 9. And if we change counter to 1, for example, you see that the script only runs 9 times, so from 1 to 9. I'm going to put it back to 0. And what you see here, you see counter is less than 10. So it basically means it stops at 9 because 10 is not less than 10. But you can also write it like this, less than 10 or equal to 10. And now the script will run 11 times. So from 0 to 10. I know you probably think this is quite a theoretical exercise where I'm going to use this. And I'm going to show you that right now. So let's go to another example. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say while true. And this basically is an infinite loop. So everything we put in here will be executed infinitely and it will never stop. So we also have to give a condition to make the script stop as we perform a certain action. So let's do the following. While true, number is input. Please provide a number and I will give you its square. Press exit to stop, or type exit to stop. Let's do it like this. And then let's start on an empty line. Okay, so we're asking for number. And then I also want number as int, because of course I have to convert this number to an integer. So I'm going to say int number, exactly like this. And before I do that, I'm going to use a condition if number is equal to exit, then I'm going to break. And you see that there is a bit more space here. So you see that if number is exit, we break. And if not, we continue here. So here you should have only one space or two spaces or one tab. And here you should have 2 tabs or 4 spaces. Let's do it like this. And then let's also calculate the square. So square of number is number as integer. Of course, we have to use the integer here because with the string, we cannot do any calculations. And now we can do the following, star, star, 2. And this basically means that we get the square of the number. And then, of course, we still have to print the square. So make sure that you use a tab here. Print the square of let's use number here, so we don't have to convert it to a string because number is still a string. The square of number is plus, and here we use square as number, square of number, and of course we have to make sure that it's converted to a string. Now you see that we do quite some conversions here from string to integer, integer to string, or in other words, we do quite some casting here. And I can tell you here from my own experience that casting or converting from integer to string, etc., is one of the most difficult parts if you're just learning a new programming language like Python. It's not going to get any more difficult here. Let's run a script. Please provide a number and I will give you its square. Let's first try if we can exit the script. So let's type exit. I will see that the script stops running because run becomes green again. And then let's run it again. Please provide a number. Okay, let's do 9. Result is 81. Let's do 5. Result is 25. So this looks pretty good. And then let's also exit. So what you've learned here is the while statements. We also call this a loop. And there are some other loops in Python as well, which act the same, but also a bit different. And you will learn a bit more about them later in this course. In this chapter, we will take a look at lists. And lists are quite a powerful feature in Python that you see in any programming language, and you will use them in almost any assignment. And let's see if we can use AI to generate some example code. So press Ctrl I. So I'm going to ask AI to create a list with 4 student names. And let's press enter. And you will see that we get back a list called students with Alice, Bob, Charlie, and David. So let's accept it. And this is what we call a list. And a list is basically a collection with variables all from the same type. You see in this case we have a list with strings, but you can also create a list with numbers. And in that case, of course, you don't use the double quotation marks. So this would be a list with numbers. And of course, with the list with numbers, you can do different actions than with the list of strings. For example, here you can get the highest number or the lowest number or the average, etc., etc. I'm going to remove this list for now because I want to focus on the list with strings for now. And the first thing that you might want to do with a list is getting a specific item from this list. And this list has different items and they all have an index. So this is number 0. Computers always start with counting by 0. This is number 1, number 2, and number 3. So there are 4 items, but the highest index is number 3. So let's see if we can put one of the students on the screen. So print students. Whereas this time I only want to see student 0. And that's going to be Alice. So let's run the script. Alice. And if I want to see the last item, then I have to refer to 3. And then I can also see David on the screen, as you can see here. Now, you might have a list and you might not know the amount of items in that list. And if you want to get the first item, of course, you can always use 0. But if you want to get the last item, you can also use -1. And this will give you the last item in this list. Now, another powerful feature is list slicing. So you can also get a part of this list. So let's say that we want the students between 0 and 3. And this will give us 0, 1, and 2. So it won't give us the number 3. So let's try that out. I will see that we get Alice, Bob, and Charlie on the screen. Now let's remove the index. We just put students on the screen. And now let's see if we can add a student. So students.append. Let's add Thomas to the list. And then let's also remove Bob. Let's run it. I will see now that we get a list with Alice, Charlie, David, and Thomas. Something that we can also do with lists is sorting them. So we can then use students.sort. And now you will see that the list will be sorted based on alphabetical order. So we get Alice, Charlie, David, and Thomas. Okay, they were already in alphabetical order, sorry for that. So I'm just going to show you how you can reverse this list. So reverse is true. This will give you the opposite of the list in alphabetical order. So let's see what we get. And then we get Thomas, David, Charlie, and Alice, and that looks correct. So at this moment, you see that we have 4 items in the list. And if you want to get the length of the list, we can do the following. Print len students. And this will give us the length of the list, so the amount of items that we have in there. And just to avoid any confusion, this is different than the indexes because the indexes are 0, 1, 2, and 3. But the amount of items, that's 4 items, right? So let's see what we get. And as you can see here, we have 4 items in this list. Now let's get back to the original list because I want to show you something else. Let's say that we have a list with students and we also have a list with graduated students. So let's call this students underscore graduated, like this. And let's say that this list is equal to students. And now not every student has graduated. So let's take students graduated. And then let's remove Charlie. Okay, and then let's put both students and students graduated on the screen. Like this. And let's run it. Now you see that we have 2 times we have the same list, right? But the real thing is that we only removed Charlie from students graduated and we didn't remove it from students. And this is because by mentioning that students graduated is equal to students, we have made a reference here to the students list and we have not actually copied the list. So every time that we perform an action on one of the 2 lists, it will perform the action on both lists. So if you want to avoid this and have 2 actually different lists, so something that you can do is use slicing and then take the entire list. So if you want to use slicing, but you don't want to do it like this, for example, you can just leave out the numbers, then you will still make the slicing. And because you do the slicing, Python will actually create a new list instead of just referring to the other list. So we have created students graduated is equal to students, but it's a copy. We remove Charlie from students graduated. And let's now see, I'm just going to clear the console. And now you will see that Charlie has only been removed from the second list. Now there are more actions that you can perform on lists, but these are more or less the basics. So let's continue with the next chapter. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at string methods. So I'm going to initiate a string. My string is equal to hello world, like this. Print my string. And methods are a bit different than the functions that we have seen earlier in one of the first chapters in order to convert strings to integers and integers to strings. So those were functions. And in this chapter, we're going to take a look at methods. And methods are already part of a string. So you will see that I'm referring to my string here. And if I then type a dot, I can see all the methods that are available for this string. And one of the methods that I can use is, for example, lower. Make sure that you also use parentheses here. Let's run the script. And this will basically return the same string, but in lower characters. Of course, you can also use upper, which has the opposite effect, like this. Then another method that I would like to mention to you is title. And this will make sure that the first letter of every word is a capital letter. So let's run it. And you'll see here, hello world, with a capital H and a capital W. Okay, let's now take a look at a bit more complicated functions. So, for example, let's try to print my string dot replace. And this method has 2 arguments. So the first one is the word that you want to be replaced. For example, hello. And the second argument is what you want to replace it with. So let's remove hello and let's put there goodbye. Let's run a script. I will see here goodbye world. Now let's create a real assignment. And in this assignment, we're going to create a nickname generator that's going to create a nickname based on your full name and a number that you're going to provide. So let's initiate my name. Let's ask for input. Provide your full name. And let's make sure that we start our answer on a new line. Let's run it. Okay, let's now process the input that we get. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to split my name into all the words that we get. And I'm going to do that with the split method. So words is equal to my name dot split. And the argument that it wants to know is the delimiter. So I want to split based on a space, right? Because that's what you normally put in between your first name and your last name. So we're now getting a list with words. So if I put Thomas Janssen, we get a list with index 0 is Thomas and index 1 is Janssen. So I want to make sure that I get multiple words. So if len words is more than 1, so if I get back more than 1 word, then I'm going to print words 0. So this is the first word. And we have earlier seen list slicing in action. And I can basically do the same thing with a string, because a string is basically a list of characters. So if I now print words 0, I'm just going to print Thomas. So let's try that out. Provide your full name, Thomas Janssen. I will see that I get back Thomas because I'm only printing words 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice this string from 0 to 4. So I only get back like the first 4 characters. And then I'm going to do the same with the second word. So let's use closing parentheses here. And let's do the same with the second word. But this time I'm referring to words 0 with also a character 0 to 4. Let's do it like this. And let's also make sure that we get this back in a title so that the first character is always a capital character. So let's do .title and use closing parentheses like this. And if we're not getting back more than 1 word, so at least 2 words, then I'm just going to put here else. And I'm just going to print this first part. Print like this. Okay, let's see what we get. Run it. And I get back Tom Jans. Now I'm also going to ask for a random number. My number input provide a number for your nickname. And then I'm providing a number, but you might remember that this number is going to be in string format, right? So it's just a number saved as a string. So I don't have to convert it to a string because it's already a string. And then I'm going to add here plus. I'm going to concatenate this string with my number like this. And I'm also concatenate this one with my number. Let's just clear our console and let's then run it again. Provide your full name. Provide a number. So let's do 2K. Tom Jans 2000 is my nickname. Now I think this chapter was a bit more complicated than the previous one, so congratulations if you were able to build this assignment together with me. If you weren't able to build this assignment together with me yet, just look back and see what you did wrong and try it again. Let's now take a look at another very powerful concept in Python that you will use a lot, especially in combination with lists. So I'm going to create a new list, birth years, and in this list I'm going to save some years in which people have been born. So for example 1985, 1991, and let's also add 2001. And then I'm going to add a for loop. So for year in birth years. So what I'm going to do with this loop, I'm going to loop through every single year of birth. And the year that I'm currently looping through, I'm going to call year. So that's what this for loop does. So it's very similar as the while loop, but we use the for loop when we loop through lists. Now let's calculate the variable age. So age is equal to the current year minus the year in which they have been born. And then I'm going to as well print the person born in year and make sure that you convert it to a string because it's currently an integer. Is now. Also convert age to a string, age years old, like this. So let's try this out. And you now see the age of these persons that have been calculated based on the year in which they have been born. In Python, you will often see that you use the same piece of code multiple times, but with different inputs and maybe also outputs. For that, we have functions. In a function, you can isolate code and you can just refer to the function as soon as you need its functionality. Now, this sounds really theoretical, so let's see a function in action. And we can create a function with the keyword def. And the function that I'm going to create is going to calculate the square of two numbers. So let's just call the function square of number. And then we're going to use parentheses. Between those parentheses, you define the inputs for the function. So if I want to calculate the square of a number, of course I need to know the number. And you can use multiple input variables. For example, you can also define a second number. But because we're only calculating the square in this example, we just need one number for now. Then in the function, we're going to design the functionality of this function. So you cannot use any other variables that you define somewhere else in your script. Let's calculate the number. So the square is equal to number multiplied by number. And now we can return the output of what we have calculated with the keyword return square, like this. Now if we want to calculate the square of a number, we can just refer to this function. Let's try that out. So I'm going to print the output of this function, and then I'm going to refer to square of number. Let's try 5. So let's run the script. I will see that the square of 5 is of course 25. If I also now want to calculate the square of, for example, number 7, I just can call to the same function and I don't have to write this functionality again. So let's run it again. I will see here the square of 5 is 25 and the square of 7 is 49. I think this still looks very theoretical, so in the next chapter we're going to build a real game with everything we have learned in this course. Let's start with the final chapter of this course, and in this chapter we're going to build our own game, rock, paper, scissors. Let's get started right away. I'm going to start with importing a module, and this is a module that is part of the standard Python package, but you have to import it in order to use it. So I'm going to import the random library, which will allow me to generate a random number. Then I'm going to create a while loop, while true. So this while loop is always going to be true. So this is an infinite loop, and I'm going to define the condition when this loop needs to be broken. So let's take a look at the design of this game. So first of all, we have two inputs. So the computer will choose either rock, paper, or scissors, and then the user will also choose either rock, paper, or scissors. And then we will do a comparison. Basically, if you have chosen rock, for example, and the computer has chosen scissors, then you will win, etc., etc. So that's the game that we are going to build. And the first input that we need is the input from the user. So I'm going to create a new variable, human player choice, which is equal to input. Please choose rock, paper, or scissors, or type exit in order to stop, like this. So this is the choice from the user, but we also need the choice from the computer. And there is no module in Python to choose between rock, paper, or scissors randomly, but what we can do is generate a random number and then assign the number to these values. Let's see how that works. So I'm going to create a new variable, computer underscore player random, which is equal to random.randint. And with randint, we will generate a random integer, which could be either 0, 1, or 2. So the random integer has to be in the range 0 and 2. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a list with choices, which includes rock, paper, and scissors. And then I'm going to create computer player choice. And do you remember that we can refer to the index of a list? So for example, we can refer to choice 0, 1, or 2. Now I'm not going to provide this number here, but I'm going to put here computer player random, like this. And this will then give us either rock, paper, or scissors randomly. So let's try that out. So let's print computer player choice.
and also exit the loop so that we are not hanging in this infinite loop forever. Let's run it. And we have to provide a choice. So I'm just going to provide rock. And I will see that the computer had chosen scissors. So in this case, I would have won. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some space here because this doesn't look too well. Then let's remove those 2 lines and let's continue. And then there is one more thing that I need to do. Of course, when the person types stop here, we also have to make sure that we stop. So I'm going to type here if human player choice is equal to exit. In that case, we're going to stop the loop, and we can do that with the break activity. So if the person is not typing exit, then we're going to generate the choice of the computer. And then the only thing that we still need to do is do the comparison. And I'm not going to type this all, but I'm just going to provide you the code. So what we basically do, there are a few scenarios. The first scenario is that the human player choice and the computer player choice are the same, right? So they're equal to each other. You have chosen the same as the computer, try again. So there is no winner, there is no loser. And then there are the other 3 scenarios. So if the human player has chosen rock, if the computer has chosen paper, you have lost. In other cases, you have won, etc., etc. So you will just get the result here, whether you lost or you won. And then a new game will automatically start where you as well have the choice to type exit, and you can end the game. There is one more thing that I'm going to do here. Is I'm just going to add some space here. So print. So just so we can see where one game ends and where the other game starts. Let's clear our history and let's run this game. Okay, so I'm going to go for rock. You lost. And let's also try paper. In this case, I won. And if you have just typed this code and you want to make sure that everything is running as expected, what you can do is just put the 2 choices here on the screen. So something like this. Computer choice. Computer player choice. Player choice. Human player choice. And I'm just going to stop it and run it again so that you can see the difference. Clear the history. Please use rock, paper, scissors, paper. I will see that the computer has chosen rock, you have chosen paper, so in this case, it makes sense that you won. Thank you for watching my complete Python tutorial. Now you've probably noticed that there are a lot of functions, methods, variable types, etc. in Python. Now in order for you to make it easier to remember all of these, I've created a cheat sheet which includes all you learned today. So just navigate to my website and you can get your free copy there. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and I hope to see you back in one of my next videos.